Henrietta's Treasure by Excalibent. Read by Goombasa. When on a ship, it's crucial that you remember 3 things. 1. Don't eat any food the chef doesn't cook, not because it's not properly served, but because you can only take so much with you until you need to make room for everything else, like the captain, deckhand, and 30-odd sailors, plus whatever else you're moving, whether it be goods or more people. 2. Follow the captain's instructions to the letter. He's done this his entire life, and it doesn't matter how many books you read or how old he seems, he still knows more than you, and he can beat you in a sparring match regardless. 3. If you see anything that might be pirates, alert everyone else and hope to dear God they don't catch you. It doesn't matter if the ship is smaller than a shack or bigger than a castle. If there's a skull and crossbones, you're out of there. If not, you're a dead man walking. Hanging on to the only plank that hadn't been torn apart by cannonballs or burnt to a cinder, in the middle of the ocean no less, I hoped that I could disguise myself amongst the wreckage. My brown fur just might work to my...
There! In the water, sir!
Haul him up, Jones!
Damn it. I didn't even have a second to react before a rope found its way around my neck and became taut. I caught it just before it constricted around my windpipe, but I couldn't get it any looser. No longer holding the plank, I submerged and got a lungful of water, with a vague sensation of being dragged upwards. My eyes were squeezed shut against the water, and I felt myself hit something before a particularly harsh tug pulled me up. I flopped onto the deck like a fish, coughing up water for a few seconds before finally gasping for air. Looking up, my heart plummeted into my stomach. I was surrounded. The men I saw looked more like clothed weapon racks. I'm serious, there were at least 3 scimitars each, not to mention... Are those pistols? One pulled his out and pointed it at my head. Click. Yeah, definitely pistols.
Here's the deal, lad, he said. You're just about the last thing we pulled out of these waters, and if you hadn't guessed, I'm William Lest. You got something worthwhile, and we'll keep you alive till we reach port or 30 days pass, whichever comes first.
William Lest. Last Chance Willie. I wasn't sure if I wanted to thank the stars or curse them straight to hell. I was pulled out of my reverie by the feeling of the gun barrel on my head.
What's your choice, boyo? Barter your life or your wealth?
It wasn't a hard decision, so I leaned back to where I was on my knees and reached into my coat. Not even whispering a word, I unhooked a scabbard from my belt and held it out to him. He jerked his head to one of his men, who removed the sword and examined it. The scabbard was of fine leather, embroidered with black threads. The sword itself, I felt, was a result of top-notch craftsmanship, supple enough to bend, brittle enough to strike. The perfect combination for a sword.
Looks good, Captain. Fine craftsmanship. We'll get a fine price for this one, I think.
Aye, but it's still just a sword. It's something, though.
He nodded to one of his crewmen, the one holding the rope, who grabbed me by the collar and pulled his fist back. I shut my eyes tight and prayed this wouldn't be my last sensation. When the pirates had first begun firing on the ship, my first instinct was to find one of the little boats and row away as fast as I could. Now that I had the chance to do that, I found myself so unmotivated it hurt. I was in the middle of the ocean, nothing but clouds and salt water for miles. The sun was bearing down hard, but it was significantly easier to deal with in the ocean. After a long internal debate on my prospects of death at sea, I began to row in a random direction. It was boring. Several times I thought I saw an island, only to discover I'd been rowing towards a realization, and became disappointed. I had no doubt it had been hours since I'd begun rowing, and the sunset felt like an icy relief. I probably could have jumped into the water for a moment to cool down, but come on, think about it. Sharks! I wiped my brow and huffed, putting my head between my legs. Maybe I should just sleep like this. Then, a rope fastened itself around my midriff, tightening faster than I could react. It yanked me out of the boat, practically throwing me onto the deck of a much larger ship. My initial reaction, I feel, was an accurate representation of the situation. How the hell did I not notice that? Good question, a female voice said. Maybe it's got something to do with your intelligence. I didn't even have to look up to know who it was. Hello, Henrietta, I sighed, my eyes drifting towards my right where she stood, decked out in high-end garb and holding a rope. Her smile was just as cocky as I knew it would be.
So, Warden, where's my treasure?
She asked, cocking her head. I rolled the word through my head a few times. Treasure. She's seen plenty of it, if her tales held true. From the most royal of chalices to the lowliest of coins, her wealth, wherever she'd been putting it all these years, had to be more than even what the wealthiest trader in the world had. But that's not what she wanted. She wanted her treasure, whole, not divided into pieces. Not between the sea and the land. Not between adventure and routine. Not between crime and law. Not between her and I. The decision had been easy. Everything else was not. But in the end, I was here. We had to settle this. She heaved me up and placed me on a barrel. She came in close and looked deep into my eyes.
Well?
She asked quietly. Her eyes were pleading but resigned, as if she'd already known my choice.
Is it me or them?
The question that everything hinges on. By no means am I to be considered an impulsive person on any level. I like to think my decisions through, considering the pros and cons, even if only for a few seconds, but I couldn't speak. I could only act. So, I closed the distance with a kiss. She returned it wholeheartedly, and I felt like I was soaring. When we broke contact, we were both panting harshly. You, I said, with such conviction I almost shocked myself. Always you. And she smiled before closing her eyes and leaning against my chest. That night, 50 port guards waited for Henrietta's ship to come in and spring the trap. The night after, all that was left was a note of resignation and a calling card.